Hello, I welcome all of you who have joined us in today's webinar from different parts of the world. Before I go into the topic of the webinar and introduce our expert speakers today, I'll just share with you some structure that we have three experts on the topic with us who will present and share their knowledge and experiences for 10 minutes each. And in this 1 hour session, we'll have some time to take your questions. But as in practiced in our previous webinars, you still have discussion forum in the course platform where you can put more questions and we'll try to respond to those. So today's webinar, as we have shared with you, the topic is nurturing a culture of learning among families. And we have three speakers with us. Professor Esther Prins, who is professor in the lifelong learning and adult education program at Pennsylvania State University, where she also serves as the co-director of Goodling Institute for Research in Family Literacy and Institute for Study of Adult Literacy. Her research interests include critical and participatory approaches to the adult education, and her research has been published in many well-known renowned journals. And recently she has published one piece in International Review of Education, on which she developed a blog and shared it with it was published by UIL and shared through course platform on the course platform as well. Our second expert is Lisa Krolak. She is chief librarian at UIL, UNESCO here in Hamburg. Before joining UIL, she has worked in different countries, in libraries, and in developing community libraries in Central America. For several years, she has been advocating for the role of libraries in developing and sustaining literacy skills. And now her work is focused sometimes on transformative potential of prison libraries as well. And she shares her international experience by writing books, blogs, and articles, and policy papers. And our third speaker is Allister. Allister is fellow at Hessian, and he is a board member of Libraries Without Borders, and at the advisory member of the Library of Congress Literacy Awards. He has previously been a Robert Bosch Stephen Fellow at Global Public Policy Institute and visiting researcher at UNESCO's UIL. Allister holds a master's in public policy from Harvard Kennedy School. So we have three experts for our topic today. And as we shared, we had framed this discussion around 4 key questions. First 2 questions, which are on how to cultivate a culture of learning and literacy and reading among communities, and the importance of documenting these experiences and sharing it through using different modes of communication and platforms. That is the questions which have been taken up by Professor Prins, and she is our first speaker. So I hand over to Professor Esther Prins. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be with you today. I will just pull up my presentation here. Okay, so I do live in Pennsylvania, which you may have heard about in the news and may continue hearing about as one of the election hotspots. So it's good to have this opportunity to think about a different topic today. So I want to, why is this not advancing? There we go. The first topic I was asked to address is how family and intergenerational learning approaches can be used in creating a learning environment in the wider community. So the first is has to do with the program model, and that's by offering educational opportunities for caregivers and children who have unmet language and literacy needs. And so this is really talking about the adult education and early childhood education components of family literacy. So examples of these groups include immigrants, refugees, early school leavers, families in poverty, grandparents who are raising children, and so on. The second or third major component is by helping parents to support their children's learning and education both in and out of school. And one of the ways that programs do this is what we in the United States call interactive literacy activities, or ILAs. So this visual, I think, represents well the three key components of family learning approaches. And certainly there are variations of those. So I want to share one brief example, and that is a family literacy program that the Goodling Institute here in State College implements. I am not directly involved with it, but my colleagues are. And so that this year has served over 10 immigrant families who are mothers with kids from ages 1 to 8. They meet twice a week, and now that is online, primarily synchronously or at the same time. And I want to show you, let me share a different screen here. This will give you a glimpse of, oh shoot, where is it? Okay, hang on a second. There we go. Okay, so this is a clip of my colleague Emily and how she does interactive literacy activities for remote instruction. So families can view these at any time. So you can see that she starts out these story times as though she were in the same room with the children. So she makes a point of greeting them one by one. So I'll just fast forward quickly here to another segment where you can see how she works with the book. Okay, let me go back to the PowerPoint. Yeah, so that is a great example of how she is trying to make the program still very interactive and engaging even during the pandemic. So this class has really been instrumental in helping moms support their children as they are or were studying remotely in particular. And in the PowerPoint, which we can share with you all later, there are links to learn more about this. Another program I wanted to briefly highlight is the Parents as Literacy Supporters program in the Vancouver area. And this is a really well-known, well-documented example of a bilingual family literacy program. And I think that is just really an example par excellence of how family literacy can promote a culture of learning. So another way that a learning environment can be created is by fostering a supportive social space, particularly for caregivers and moms in particular who are socially and physically isolated. So this is a quotation from a mom who participated in our Family Pathways program. She said, "Before joining this class, sometimes I felt lethargic. Because of COVID, I couldn't meet my friends, so I had nothing new. I saw that my daughter has grown, but I didn't change at all. But after I joined the class, my life has changed. Sometimes it's hard, but I'm so happy I can update myself and see my teachers and classmates. So this program saved my life." And you can learn more about this topic of social support through an article in the link. Oh, I skipped a part. Okay, it looks like I am missing a slide here. So let me just say another way that programs can support a learning environment, and that is by operating as resource brokers. This is what sociologist Mario Louis Small refers to as organizations that can provide members with access to important resources like information, public benefits, finding out, where you can get free childcare, et cetera. And so family learning programs are really crucial operating as resource brokers, particularly in high poverty communities. So in terms of the second question, why is it important to document experiences from the field in a systematic way and then share the evidence? So why document? First of all, to learn from practice and guide future research policy and practice. And the second reason is to develop, this is the Greek word phronesis, which refers to practical wisdom applied to specific concepts. And this is different than technical know-how and generalizable knowledge, which is how we usually think of social science research. So the goal here is to produce research that can help develop phronesis by increasing understanding and affecting change in specific contexts, rather than questing after the ghost of an abstract knowledge of law-like processes. So we're really looking to create knowledge about how family literacy is working on the ground so that we can inform specific practice settings. And again, I have a link where you can learn more. So the importance of multiple forms is that you can offer multifaceted portrait of the research findings, triangulate data sources, and reach different audiences. And I have here in this table some of the ways that my colleagues and I share our research findings. And so you'll see that some of these are geared specifically toward academic audiences, some are accessible to practitioners, and some would be useful to policymakers in organizations like in the US, the Migration Policy Institute or UNESCO, et cetera. So it runs the gamut from the graduate classes I teach and journal articles I write to conference presentations, webinars like this one, providing technical assistance, and so forth. I'm just going to highlight in closing examples of some research projects on family literacy that my colleagues and I have worked on. So one that's ongoing right now is evaluating the William Penn Foundation's Family Literacy Initiative, which is 5 programs in Philadelphia. We also have completed a project on the Read to Your Child program, which is a family literacy program for incarcerated parents in Pennsylvania prisons. We've conducted an evaluation of the Smithsonian Learning Lab and Project Zero in preschool classrooms. Conducted a study on social support, social networks, and mental health among women in poverty and family literacy and adult ed programs. And my colleague and I critiqued the Parent Education Profile, which is a parenting assessment instrument. So I have at the end here readings and resources that you can look up at your leisure. So thank you very much. And here's a picture of me with my daughter when she was about 2 and our cat reading If You Give a Cat a Cupcake.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Prins. It was really like I'll can link some of your points with the course materials and the modules we are covering in this week for our participants. That in this module we have talked about gathering evidence and then presenting it to different audience and in different forms. So the points you have raised about making family learning and literacy programs relevant for the communities you are working with, that is one point which we are reiterating throughout our course in different modules. That is our continuous message throughout this course, that how to make the initiatives which our course participants will be planning for their communities where they're working, how to make them relevant for their context, for the needs of the families. So there might be the examples you have presented, they were varied and different. And in our previous webinars, experts have shared examples from their context. And then there is back and forth, and we learn from each other about all these different examples, that how we can plan in accordance with the context we are working in. And the second part of your talk, which was about documentation, because we have, like UIL has implemented a family literacy program in Africa, 2 countries, and there we had learned, and we had to emphasize for the field implementers to document their experience, because that is something which is usually not, because the field implementers are very practical practitioners. So the documentation and evidence building is usually missed. So that is the main message for our module, which we are doing in our course this week. And now I invite Lisa Krolak to present her, share her views and her knowledge and experiences with you all. Thank you, Lisa.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me get my PowerPoint. Here we go. Yes, greetings to everybody. I'm most happy to share with you how libraries can be used for promoting reading and learning as a family activity. And I share it with you from Germany. We just started another Corona lockdown for November after we had a strict one in spring. But I'm very happy to say that the government keeps the libraries open. So they see libraries as an important educational institution, and they are not closed, whereas all cultural institutions are closed, all entertainment institutions are closed. But schools, kindergarten, libraries, adult education centers, this time are kept open. I wanted to start with that. But now let's turn to libraries, which, as I hope I don't have to explain, have literacy and learning at their heart, particularly for families. You have libraries, a network of libraries in almost every country. Some are more privileged or have more libraries than others, but in general, you find them in every country. And they're very important to help you develop and sustain literacy skills, as you need at every age level and at every literacy level. You need practice. And I would like to stress, you need access to very attractive reading materials in your reading level, in your language, different materials. And this is why I think especially families are the ones which really appreciate libraries, use libraries a lot. Even in my personal case, I'm a librarian, but I didn't use libraries for many years until I had children. And now I'm back every week to get books because they read so much, nobody can buy. So I go to the next slide. Let me see. How does this work? Here, one moment. I learn, lifelong learning. I don't have the panel to change the slide. There, wait, stop.
I think if you click on it, it will.
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Jamila. So some points about family literacy and libraries. As I mentioned before, they serve all age groups. And I think, again, this is not what many of the other education institutions are necessarily doing. Schools, universities, kindergartens, they are all for more or less for specific ages. But libraries, you can go as a toddler, as an old person. And most likely they offer free services. Even unfortunately in Germany, we have to pay for borrowing materials, but anybody can walk in, anybody can sit down, read, share resources. So they are basically free services. They are safe, welcoming, friendly, hopefully nice furniture, attractive places to meet. And I should mention, they don't just provide print materials, of course, also digital materials. And as I mentioned, for all reading levels and in different languages. I'm also want to stress it's not just a place for books, of course. They conduct various literacy activities. It can be talks, it can be movies, it can be lectures. Yesterday I went to an exhibition in a library, could be a music concert. And they always have this aim to reach out to people who don't necessarily come to the library for various reasons. Can be that they can't come because they are homebound, or they can't come because they live far away. So there are mobile buses maybe going to them. But there are also programs to reach out to vulnerable families. And I've been to a library in Berlin some time ago. They, for example, offered breakfasts for Turkish families to reach out to the Turkish families and to come up with an idea how to make it a little bit easier for them to enter. Maybe also for families who would not come to a German library full of German books, but they make sure to find a way to make it attractive for them and to show them we also have materials in your languages. Then for me, very important to stress is that libraries are often trusted places, they're conveniently located, they're well known often, they're already there. And this is important for me. If you think about a program, to start a new program, we quite often hear of wonderful ideas of NGOs coming into a country, or yes, local organizations starting a wonderful idea, but it's not necessarily sustainable. It's just a project for a few years, then there's no funding and the wonderful project stops. But working with libraries, you might have this long-term commitment and sustainability. This slide I've chosen because it doesn't show people reading. Yeah, you see children on the laps of their mothers, clapping hands, maybe singing together, rhyming together. Language vocabulary development is also important for literacy. And I wanted to say a few words about a program that is called Book Start, which started in the UK, but went to a lot of countries. It's now done in a lot of countries under different names, maybe. And you can see there a mother sitting with her two children, and around her you find some of the Book Start materials. The idea of Book Start is that research says that literacy development starts at birth. So please don't wait until children go to school, start early, and that the first 5 years are crucial. So in the UK program, and then I know it for the German program, they decided that all children should get a bag with a book and with materials for the parents, for the caregivers, to learn how to read together with the children, why it is important, how to do different literacy activities. They sometimes get a free library card. So as you see on the picture, different materials attractive for them to find out that reading to your child is so important. And then the idea is not just reading, as I say, it is rhyming, singing, creating stories, telling stories, etc. But to do it together as a family activity. So the idea in the end is to assist families in creating positive and stimulating home learning environments. For the German, and I think also for the British program, I should stress it's not necessarily done by the libraries. There are partners in this program. And for example, this bag with all these attractive materials is being given out by the pediatrician, which I find very interesting, as this is a person often the mothers, fathers, caregivers trust. And it's reaching everybody, because in Germany, every child has to go to the pediatrician regularly, and they get this back when they're around 1 year old. In Germany, also when they're around 4.5 years old. in Britain are here when they're 4 years. So this is a very nice program, and you find more information in the UIL database, LitBase, I will talk about in a second. Let me turn to the prison environment. As Jamila mentioned, this is one of my major focus area at the moment. When you think about prison, you might not necessarily think about family learning or family literacy, but I want to share a few pictures to show you how you can be creative and innovative and come up with nice examples how to make sure that incarcerated parents also can do family literacy activities. You see at the top right, you see incarcerated men sitting together with their partners, with their wives, women, and you see children on their laps. Yeah, it's a family activity, so the families come to visit, but they sit together and they play, they do crafts, they sing, they read, and I heard that one inmate, for example, said this was the best time always in prison. It was the nicest time to be together as a family and learn together as a family. It's a picture from Australia. It was run in cooperation with the library. And for example, the local library gave a present to the child at the goodbye, also to make the goodbye not so difficult, just to give a little present to the child. And then you can imagine it has a positive learning effect to get this book and take it home. The picture below where you see the library shelves is a prison library in Kenya. And if you look at the very end, you see it's more colorful. There are little chairs. So it's a female prison. And I just, when I went to the exhibition in the public library in Hamburg yesterday, I learned, it was an exhibition on prisons actually, I learned that 60% of female prisoners are mothers. I mean, the same for fathers. There are so many parents in prison, of course. So 60% in Germany are mothers, and sometimes they have the children with them when they're very small, or the children come to visit. And again, for the prison library to make space, very friendly, welcoming space that mother and child and father can sit together and spend the time together. I think that's a very good example for family literacy and family learning. I want to talk a little bit more regarding the picture on the left side, where you can see an inmate reading a book. And you should know that he's being recorded while reading it. And this is a program called Storybook Dads. Esther mentioned it in her research. So in Pennsylvania or in the US where you do the research, it's called Read to Your Child. It's the same idea. So Storybook Dads is the idea that the inmate can practice his literacy skills while bonding with his children. The idea is that he's recorded while he's reading the book, and the recording is sent to his child at home or her child at home. So the child at home can look at the video or listen to the tape, and he or she hears the father's, mother's voice. And I like it so much because it really shows that the parent is a good role model, that the parent shows I'm reading and I show this care and attention and everything for you. And this is a positive thing, of course. Very important, it helps to break the vicious cycle of educational disadvantage, because you might know all over the world, I see that often prisoners have less educational background than the rest of society. Of course, there are exceptions, but just in general. So there are quite many prisoners who have difficulties with reading and writing. And not to have this go on and on and on, I think this is a very nice small program to break this cycle. For the prisoner, it's also important. They really often miss their children, and being a good role model and having a motivation for a positive change and a better future, this can help a little bit. I finished this with a quote by Sharon Berry, who is the founder of Storybook Dads. She used to be working in prison as a social worker. I quite like the quote. So it's, what better way to engage a non-reading, hard-not prisoner who lacks parenting skills and has lost contact with his kids than getting him to read Cinderella. Sharon Berry is the lady you see on the picture. From my side, from UNESCO, how do we share best practices? I listed some of the books, policy brief, article, blogs that I've written in the area of family learning and family literacy. I mentioned before our database, LitBase, where you can access many innovative examples how to support literacy. And there are examples for families. I'm sure you heard about it before. And in my case, I also do quite some networking. So one institution I network quite a bit with is IFLA, the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. It's the global voice of the library community. There are different sections. I listed the one on literacy and reading. Apart from that, it's what we do right now, webinars, presentations, workshops, sharing information via listservs. So as Esther mentioned before, different ways to reach different people. I finish with this and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for sharing these examples and your experience at working in different organizations and on different programs. So one thing which I can connect, the points which I can connect very clearly with the course which we are doing on family and intergenerational literacy and learning is that there can be various spaces and places where you can initiate the activities where children and adults come together. And one of these places can be libraries. And then in our previous webinar, some participants were interested about examples from urban areas, because libraries are usually a phenomenon, there are exceptions and in different countries, an urban concept in most of the developing countries, and it is like reducing space of libraries generally in countries. So you can create, like, if there are libraries, they can be very good places to initiate not only literacy but a joy of reading and learning together through different activities, which can be singing and dancing and recitations and reading. And then it brings us to our third speaker, who is like, what should we do? Like whether the libraries should go to people or people should come to libraries. So I think this is the part of the discussion which Allister will add to, that how libraries can move to different places and be accessible for families from different backgrounds, from different socioeconomic class, from different contexts. So I welcome Allister to take on. Thank you. Allister, you are on mute. Okay. Yeah,
yes, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Learned a lot already. So I will be speaking today about the work of Libraries Without Borders, building from what has been stated in terms of the best practices and what Lisa's amazing work in prison libraries. Great. So I'll start with one of our programs in particular. So over the past 4 years, Libraries Without Borders has been extending family literacy programs through laundromats. And we started this work, and it's been one of the most joyful projects that I've had the pleasure to work on after a series of tests. So I'll take you back first to 2015, when I had the opportunity to set up pop-up libraries around the South Bronx with the New York Public Library. And we tested dozens of locations, ranging from lobbies of low-income housing to grocery stores and subway stations. And we found that laundromats had the highest engagement rate for our literacy programs. And if you can imagine, there's many reasons for that. I don't know how many folks on the call live in the US. I think the American laundromats are a particular cultural phenomenon. The experience of poverty in the US is also one that I think is too often has many, many barriers associated with it that we were trying to reduce. So unlike, I had the opportunity to spend some time in France and Germany and a few other Western European countries, and of course in the many countries that Libraries Without Borders has worked in, I think that laundromats in the US are a particular phenomenon. This is an example of what a typical Saturday afternoon looks like. And you can see why I've been so excited to work with public libraries across the US to be extending family literacy programs to these spaces. It's a real opportunity to meet families, particularly those that are living at or below the poverty line, where they are, when they are available. And so what we've been learning with public libraries across the US is that increasing the availability of literacy programs does not necessarily increase their accessibility. And so, in the past, and we were a group that also did this, right? If we didn't have folks that the attendance or the retention or the completion rates that we wanted, we would print more flyers, we would subsidize public transportation passes, we would rewrite the curriculum. But even after these efforts, many programs still faced challenges engaging participants, right? And so what we've seen is that there are a few foundational, what we call accessibility barriers that more inclusive program designs should be addressing. The first include skills barriers, right? So as more literacy resources move to the internet, who is there to teach you how to create an email, how to use a web browser, how to read and interpret web-based literacy resources? I don't think creating another app will solve this problem, especially if this is an audience that doesn't know how to download or use this app. At Libraries Without Borders, we believe it's very critical to increase opportunities for people to learn digital literacy skills alongside literacy skills with a facilitator. Another barrier that we've encountered is scheduling barriers. So one participant at an adult literacy program at the Detroit Public Library stopped attending after the second class. I got to ask her why she had dropped out, hoping honestly to receive feedback on our curriculum or our methodology. But she responded by saying, she had actually enjoyed the first two classes, but had only dropped out because she works at two different restaurants, and every week her work schedule changes, right? She wanted to come to our weekly program that met at the library every Tuesday at 6 p.m., but could not afford to miss a shift. And she was embarrassed that she had dropped out and has not signed up for another library program since. And the key learning here is that programs, no matter how free, right, or even if they're online, that meet at the same time and place each week are not always accessible to people who work in service industries with unpredictable work schedules, right? And even those people who work more regular 9-to-5 jobs may find that their work schedules preclude them from accessing library resources, particularly in communities where libraries are seeing decreased hours of operation during the week or closing on the weekend due to budget cuts. So we have found greater success in increasing enrollment, retention, and completion of literacy programs when we bring our programs actually outside of the walls of the library to meet people where they are in spaces like the local laundromat. Another barrier we encounter is what I call psychosocial barriers, right? And so a lot of families that I've had the opportunity to work with have found literacy programs to be daunting or irrelevant. And there are a ton of societal stigmas that exacerbate how people's insecurities with learning literacy skills. And for many of us, learning something new can trigger feelings of vulnerability, of course, and I think literacy skills are no different. So the development of literacy frequently requires a baseline of comfort and trust, right, between individual participants, facilitators, and institutions. In the contexts we've worked in, we've seen how the creation of peer support networks increases completion rates of programs more effectively, for example, than something like offering a prize or even a micro certificate, right, at the end of the program. We believe that it is important to design programs that really make participants feel safe to ask questions, no matter how basic, about what they do not know. And that really takes time. We also believe it is critical to design programs that broaden and reinforce peer social support networks within these spaces. So now back to the laundromat. Imagine this: while you wait for your laundry to dry, wash and dry every 90 minutes every week, you can now participate in facilitated workshops from the local public library and from other literacy partners. Here is one example from a laundromat space that we transformed in New York. In this particular program, Libraries Without Borders partnered with the Clinton Foundation's Too Small to Fail program to create literate-rich spaces inside laundromats. As you can see, it's a simple design tweak from a normal waiting room to be a literate-rich environment. And with facilitators there to be empowering parents with tools to talk, read, and sing with their young children, not only at home, but also while they're waiting in spaces like these, and on buses and on subways. Here's an example of a St. Paul public librarian extending their family literacy programs to laundromats. And now in this space and others, we're in over a dozen states now across the US with this program. The librarians we work with are actually setting up tents outside of laundromat parking lots to be able to continue providing these programs in a safe way. Laundromats are essential services during the pandemic because they're not really an option, right? If you don't have an in-unit washer dryer, you have to use the laundromat. So usage has actually, I've seen, gone up at laundromats during the pandemic. And so by creating these outdoor spaces in the parking lots of the laundromat, we've been able to keep these programs alive in a safe outdoor way. Libraries Without Borders is also now providing programs in mobile home communities across the US in a similar way. And, you know, it's not just laundromats, right? Groups like the Conscious Connect are extending family literacy programs to barbershops across, which is particularly effective in urban communities across the US. And school librarians like Liz Phipps Soiro are creating book bikes to extend literacy opportunities, again, outdoors in public parks and other spaces in cities like Cambridge, Massachusetts. So if I can leave you with one thing, it is this: that one of the most effective ways, and we all have been speaking about this, to advance children's literacy is to equip parents and caregivers with the tools and skills to foster literacy learning. Absolutely. My one thing that I'd love to leave everyone with is to think about how and understand how the contexts in which these parents and caregivers we're trying to reach, how do they live? In the US and elsewhere, I think it's particularly important to understand the experience of poverty and to adapt family literacy programs that meet families where they are, when they are available. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Allister. I just, when I was listening to you talking about these concept of bringing libraries or reading materials to families, so I'll connect it with some of our course materials which we have shared through our course platform, and different examples from different countries, and different case studies which our course participants have read and commented upon. So though these programs look very different in context, very urban context, very urban setting, but some of the challenges you have mentioned, like we saw these challenges even in the rural communities of Gambia and Ethiopia, like skills and the confidence and scheduling. Like if these are rural communities, then there are different crop seasons, so they have to what is the priority, whether it is the livelihood, attend to your livelihood, or to be in the program for literacy and reading development. So the communities whom usually our programs are dealing with, they have like they have to they have different challenges around these scheduling, and then psychosocial confidence or background which you have mentioned. That is something which through our programs we have been making a conscious effort to develop the confidence, not only in parents to support their children, but also in children to be part of their parents' learning. Because in some cultures, it is the generational barriers between elders and younger members of the family. Sometimes those need to be broken. So uh, through our webinars, we are trying to present and give a taste of different settings and from different contexts where family and intergenerational literacy and learning programs have been implemented, and there are some experiences. And I just now have a few questions. We don't have a lot of time, but I'll give at least one question to each one of you so that you can share more about your knowledge and experiences and how you react on it. Our participants will be looking forward to. So my first question is to Professor Esther Prins. Like this is one thing which we have, like through our experience at UIL and in different organizations who share their experience. One thing which is a great challenge is bringing the universities or researchers closer to the field implementers so that there is this partnership. So when you worked with family literacy programs, how did that barrier or that challenge was responded to or addressed, that creating this partnership with you as academic based in the university doing your research and field implementation of those programs? There must be different teams who are working in the field. So what were your experience of this partnership between the researchers and implementers in the field? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So my current experience with this is through the William Penn Foundation evaluation. So we do have the contract to evaluate those 5 programs, which at the time, of course, we had no idea there would be a global pandemic. But that role not only involves evaluation, but also very intensive technical assistance. So prior to the pandemic, we had several workshops with people from the program, not only to train them in the research protocols and data that we need to collect, but also to troubleshoot problems, etc. We've continued to do that through webinars and regular meetings. We are each assigned to a program that we kind of oversee. We have them submit for example, their plans for remote instruction. So yeah, we try to make academic research available. So I would say in this case, it's really through providing hands-on technical assistance and professional development, and also setting up a forum where they can learn from each other. I would say a lot of our other work involves trying to make research accessible through, for example, the conference presentations that we make. We always go to practitioner-oriented conferences like the National Families Learning Summit, etc. So that wouldn't be, intensive involvement with any single program, but rather, trying to share the research that we've done, or do professional development topics like collecting data, etc.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And because this is one challenge, that because of sometimes funding limitations, these partnerships do not materialize. Research costs need to be built in the program planning. That is the point for our course participants, because they'll be planning their activities for family literacy and learning programs in their own context. So if there is funding allocated, or if the costs are met, or sometimes through partnerships with universities have their own funding, and if they can join hands, or sometimes these partnerships can be formed through government institutions. Like if government ministry can collaborate or bring in university partners from relevant higher education institutions, I think that is something which we are trying to give these ideas to our participants, that how they can work with academic research community, and what is the value of bringing them in. And then it adds to not only the credibility and but it also makes their work more visible, because as you have said, that if you take your research to a conference or to a seminar to share this with different audience, then the work for the project team on the communication, that is shared with the researchers. So that is the benefits which research community and the practitioners from the field can work together and bring to each other. So
I'll just add one
please.
more brief thing, that we do offer an online certificate in family literacy, which is a really important form of professional development in the field. To my knowledge, it's, if not the only one of the only post-baccalaureate certificates on family literacy, and that's taught by my colleagues who are experts in the field and provides research-based knowledge for people in the field.
Thank you. Thank you. And now my question is to Lisa, that Lisa, when you have these examples from prison libraries and like where family, male and female, both in prisons, you can, like you saw the examples where family learning environment was created through different means, by the whether through presence of families in the prisons where they could do activities, or through digital means where dads could read stories for their children who are not there. So within these environments, like what is like the lingual barriers, like if there are linguistic variation, for example, in a country where different languages are spoken, so how to create an environment where first the incarcerated persons feel confident, skilled, and then enjoy that activity with their families, but in the language they are more comfortable in. So if you can respond to this question, taking on any element of it, it would be good. Yeah, thank you.
It's a very relevant question. As in prisons, you find many people with different languages. And you can imagine that, let's say, the prison library does not necessarily have materials in all languages. Of course, it should be the aim, but we have to see at what is realistic. So the aim is to have those languages. Reality might look different. If I cite Finland as an example, where they have in their country a multilingual library for the whole country, which has materials in all languages. And then if you're a prison in Finland, you can go to the library and say, I have a prisoner from Albania, I have a new prisoner from Angola, I don't know, I need materials in those languages. They send it to them, but I'm very aware this is far away from the reality of most countries. But just to cite, there are solutions. When you talk about the program that I briefly mentioned, I just want to stress that they make it possible for every prisoner to read a book. This might mean the prisoner reads in his language to his children, of course. I mean, we agree the children should read and learn in their mother tongue, in their local language. So the prisoner will do that. And if the recorder does not understand, I'm sure there is a solution. Translator, whatever. But I also want to stress it's just related. If the prisoner is not a good reader, we have, of course, also that problem. They also make sure he or she can read in a very nice way, maybe by practicing, maybe by learning by heart and then showing the pictures. So they will accommodate both issues. You cannot read very well, and the language issue, of course, you have to address this. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Now we are very close to our closing time, so I have one question for Allister as well. That if establishing these libraries outside libraries, that is the concept you talked about. That you take these libraries to different places. For USA, it is laundromats, which is common. It may not be common in other countries. There are other places where these activities can be started, for example, in places of worship, in doctor clinics, as Lisa mentioned. And then, but what are the costs? Like, are these very expensive arrangements? Or like, if you can share this, that will be very interesting for our participants to think about any such initiative. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I myself think of the most important aspect of our interventions as really the people, actually, right? It's the librarians and their relationships with the people that they're working with that I think creates the longest lasting impact. So the costs of the materials themselves are often not the highest cost, right? Instead of having a chair that's bolted to the ground, you have a chair with wheels that you can move next to tables that you can move. And through that, you can create dynamic groups and different kinds of spaces, right? Within a laundromat waiting room and other kinds of spaces to cover the costs of the librarians to be there, though. I think that's the most important part of the intervention.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That was like, because I asked this question because like when we were working in Gambia and Ethiopia, you could imagine that the families were sitting under the trees. So I know that I could get your point that space is usually not the cost, because if the families are learning together, they can learn together under a tree, on the ground. And but it is I just the most important point which I think you have raised here is that having that critical mass of passionate people. They, in your case, these were librarians. In other cases, like there'll be those people who are providing these services, that how committed they are, how accessible they are, and how connected they are with the communities. And then we had our previous webinar on the importance of having facilitators for these programs. So they are the people who then make these connections and links between the families and the initiative. So these, we call them nuts and bolts of the program. So like you have them and they hold everything together. And our webinar, or in our webinar, we also talked about creating low cost materials. So materials can be created, these learning materials can be created from the environment. If there are cardboards, if there are boxes of the food and the cans of food, or like newspapers, so that is the skill and passion and commitment of those people who are implementing these programs. And mostly the most close to the families are the facilitators. They can be the librarians in your case, but for a organized structured family literacy program in adult education or early childhood education, they are the teachers or the facilitators who are working with families. So how they make this connection through using materials from the environment they are working in the context they are working in. They might be working with very rural communities and their learning needs may be different. So it is very important to have your hand on the pulse of the communities you are working with. And we have had a pleasure listening from all you three, and thank you. You have shared, Dr. Prince has offered to share the tools they have used in an evaluation program, which we will share with our course participants. And all our three experts, they have had these resources on their slides, which we will make available for our participants, and recording along with recording of this webinar. So I'll just leave the room with thanks from the course team to Professor Prins, Lisa Krolak, and Allister Chang. Thank you very much for your time and sharing your experiences with the participants of our course. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.